welcome. I'm Barbara Muller, and I am honored to say I was married to Robert Muller, and every once in a while it brings a tear to my eye for 17 years. And the reason it brings a tear is because I had 17 years of amazing work for peace. And those ideas were captured in the book, Prophet the Hatmakers Son. They were also captured in all of the web addresses. If you go to robertmuller.org, you will see the thousands of ideas, and the ideas bring peace to us. Once upon a time, Douglas Gillies, my dear friend and author of Prophet the Hatmakers Son, this is the book we are talking about in the Peace Club that we are now in. And once upon a time, Douglas said, how could a man, a human being, do so much in one lifetime? And we were at the Invitational in Santa Barbara. And at that Invitational, Robert Muller was invited to join us. And he said he would join with enthusiasm. And when I saw with enthusiasm, it just sank to my heart, because people say I am enthusiastic also. Well, that's my philosophy. If you're going to do something, do it with enthusiasm. And so when I met him, here was this stocky, gorgeous, gray-haired, blue-eyed Alsace-Lorrainer, about up to here on me. And I said, oh, he's short. I won't pay any attention to him. I always wanted a tall guy so I could wear high heels. Oh, that was the last time I ever said that. As soon as he opened his mouth, I began to see it's not about your height. It's not about your looks. It's about your passion for peace. It was so contagious. All the people there, including Jerry and Desmond, were there. And we were all bubbling with peace possibilities. And that's why we're doing this Peace Club. That's why we're doing this Peace Book Club. Sandy was the one that said, Barbara, you need to do a Peace Book Club to begin to celebrate Robert's 100th birthday. That is March 11th, 2023. Ambassador Chadre was so eloquent as he went through chapter 2. And as he sends me emails about what we can do to celebrate a man who had a vision bigger than the world, who had a vision bigger than all the problems on the planet, he just kept going. He never gave up. Right, Ambassador Chadre?
Yes.
Ambassador Chadre is, you'll be hearing his chapter when you go to peacepodcast.org and go up to programs, and you can view chapter 2. You can view chapter 1 on peacepodcast.org and allow yourself to feel the joy of each chapter of Prophet the Hatmakers Son. If you don't have the book, it's still available on Amazon. But let me just give you a little background. Prophet the Hatmaker's Son by my friend, Douglas Gillies. Margaret Mead called him the most brilliant man at the United Nations. And you may know she was the anthropologist who helped create the first Earth Day with John McConnell. There's so much history in this Zoom call today you're going to hear. Robert Muller, and this is why I want to really have Yasmine Sherif today. Robert Muller experienced the devastation of 2 world wars. One night while standing in a dark battlefield, weeping for all the young people whose lives had been squandered, he swore that he would devote his life to peace. Robert left everything behind and joined the UN in its 3rd year and spent the next 40 years following that dream. He never gave up. His enthusiasm and optimism led him to become known as the Prophet of Hope. This book and these podcasts is a treasure chest of largely unknown events based on extensive interviews with Robert and experiences with world leaders. And as you look at the beautiful face of Douglas Gillies, you will see it was he who spent 2 years traveling the world, going to where Robert was born, sitting at my dining room table, asking Robert, are you sure? Is that what, he's a lawyer. He's a trained lawyer, experienced lawyer. And he said, are you sure that you did that exactly that way. And Robert would go to the garage right next to the dining room, and he would open up the archives and he would say, here it is. Of course I did that. So not only did he use his vocabulary, his words, and his 7 languages that he spoke to explain to Douglas what his life was about, but he had archival material. And that archival material was evidence that he had lived a life at the United Nations. Recently, I talked to the United Nations, to one of the fellows in charge of the archives, and he said, we want all of Robert's archives. Do you know I have 2 storage bins full, and I'm talking big ones full of his archival material. This man signed every single letter that came to him. He kept the envelope. He put his name on it, and he put the date. Why? Because he knew that whoever sent him a letter had a message. And if he put his name on it, he blessed it. That's what I want you to do today. Bless this moment. I thank you for the hour you're giving me, because us, let's say us, giving us this hour. This is your life, your precious life. And we're giving up 1 hour to learn about the precious model that Robert left. When he died in 2010, we had a room full of his family. The family is giant. They're all over the world. And every one of them was there with the joy of knowing this man. We can't bring Robert back, but we can bring back his words. And we want you to remember one thing that we learned at the invitational that Douglas and I learned. If you want somebody to become a world citizen, remember this: you are their mentor. You are the person that could lead them into becoming a world-class citizen. When we ask the question at the invitational, how do you go from linear thinking to global thinking? The answer came up after 7 days with world leaders. We need mentors. Mentors teach. Mentors teach by example in their words. And that's what this book is about. Robert wrote so many poems. I'm going to read one poem because I want you to remember we are humans on this planet. Decide to be human, to be a world citizen, a global being, a member of the human family, to place humanity above everything else. That's why we have mutually assured survival. Because to place humanity above everything else, to love your human brethren and sisters as your own family, never to kill, not even in the name of a nation, never to exercise physical or verbal abuse or violence, to know, love, and respect your beautiful planetary home, to live in it as a grateful, joyful guest, to live in it as you contribute to the humanity, your peace, your kindness, and your happiness, to help further ascend the human race, to cherish the endless, beautiful diversity, to educate your children, and that's why I read this one, to educate your children as world citizens and children of God, and to leave behind you the remembrance of a good, kind, loving human being. And that tears me up because that's what Robert did. When you go to Robert's tombstone, it says he spent his life working for happiness. And he asks you to do one thing: live your life as a happy human being and save our earth. And then underneath, this is the first time I've ever seen this, but I said, heck, I'm a PR person. We put his website, www.robertmuller.org. So when you go to the tombstone of Robert Muller, you can take out your iPhone and be with him. You know, when he was about, I would say 85, he said, you know, Barbara, I want you to make a bench near my tomb when I die, because I want to have people sit down and hear me play my harmonica. And I said, oh, Robert, I'll do that. So I went to the tombstone maker and I said, do you have a bench we could put? He said, absolutely. And then I went to the graveyard director and he said, no, you can't put a bench next to his grave. And I said, well, what am I going to do? So that's why I put www.robertmuller.org. So you take out your iPhone, go to peacepodcast.org, and there is Robert in all his glory, playing his harmonica. Why did he do that? Because he opened up your heart. He didn't just start saying, now, you know, if you're all good and you all work for peace, we're going to have peace. No, he played his harmonica. Do, 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 do. And Tammy could play that on her harp because that's what we're talking about. Joy. We need to have joy on our planet. And he would always play that because it would open up his heart. And then he would say, now, what have you done lately to make our world a better place? He wouldn't start with what he knew. He would ask the question, just like Douglas did, the lawyer. Douglas would ask the questions to Robert. He would say, how could you survive when you saw these atrocities in front of you, the Germans shooting the French and the French shooting the Germans? And guess what? Each of them were cousins, shooting your cousin, having dinner together, going home and shooting. This is where we are today, in a place that I call home, Ukraine and Russia. Why? I call everything home. We are on our planet Earth is our home. These nation states allow us to do things that are atrocious, and you know that. So that's why we're here together today, because I want you to know, if you want our world to survive, we need education. Education above all. And this chapter that we are reading here in Prophet is about the miracle of life, the miracle of life. And as we are born into this world whole and perfect, the miracle of our life is so precious. If each of you today just do one thing, listen to Yasmine Sherif and understand why she is in charge for UNICEF Education Can't Wait. And I've given you a little background about Robert, but I really am excited today because our speaker is incredible. She is on peacepodcast.org. She talks about how education can't wait. She's traveled the world working with people to make sure that they have the opportunities that we all have had to have education, and an education in a way that people are not going to become shot after their classes. I'm saying this because you all know the tragedies we are facing today on our planet. These are tragedies that should never happen. Gun violence isn't something that Robert would ever condone. And gun violence is not what we want for our children as they are getting educated. So I'm going to stop with that and go into Yasmine Sherif. She's a human rights lawyer for 30 years. Her experience with the United Nations system and civil society has allowed this woman to travel to Africa, Asia, the Balkans, the Middle East, and has served her as she worked in the United Nations in Geneva, New York, and she is the director of Education Cannot Wait, a global fund for the delivery of education in emergencies and protracted humanitarian crisis. Can you imagine the humanitarian crisis that young children are going through? You've seen them. You've seen them, the tears that I shed when I see these photos of children in the war-torn zones. And I think, how can that be? Governments are not taking care of our humanity the way they should. And that's why we have Prophet the Hatmakers Son. I am eternally grateful to Douglas Gillies because, Douglas, you did it when nobody else paid attention to what his life meant. Why could this man coming from a war-torn zone say to his father, I'm going to be a peacemaker? And his father said, I pity you, young man. You're not going to be rich because peacemakers don't make any money. Peacemakers don't make any money. He said, I don't care. I'm going to work for peace. And then I'm going to tell you one more story. And that was when he was at the University of Strasbourg. There's so much I could tell you, but it's all in the book. When he was at the University of Strasbourg, on the wall during one of the semester ends, he saw, how would you run the world if you were the president of the world? And he said, that's for me. He sat down and he wrote an essay by the United Nations Association of Strasbourg that the entry to the United Nations would be the first world prize. Now, we're talking 1944, when the United Nations was just a thought, because in 45 it was started, I should say. So he wrote that essay, and then he heard about 3 or 4 months later, and they answered the door. Is Robert Muller here? Remember, he's in the war-torn zone. And his mother said, why do you want him? Well, he won the essay contest, and we want him to go to the newly formed United Nations. And imagine Robert's joy of hearing that he got his wish, his dream. And so let's go forward. There's Yasmine. Yasmine's in Geneva. She wants to be at the United Nations. Robert Muller wrote the book, Most of All, They Taught Me Happiness. And she reads the book in the bookstore. And she says, who is this man that wrote the book, Most of All, They Taught Me Happiness? And she finds him. And Yasmine, tell us the rest of the story. Yasmine Sherif, please join us now.
Thank you very much, Barbara. You are so inspirational. I first of all, I want to thank you for the way you are honoring your husband, Robert Muller, and also for being that mentor and inspiring all of us. You are just amazing. I feel your energy, no matter how far away you are. Beautiful energy. Also, I would like to say congratulations to Douglas. What a book! This amazing, absolutely, to be able to capture the spirit of and the work of Robert Muller in such a beautiful way. I'm going to give this to my kids now also. And I want to thank all of you for being here, every one of you, and also my dear and beloved team that live and work in the spirit of Robert Muller, Ken Page, who is our Chief of Advocacy and Communications, and Elias Baha, and Jelena Borak, and many more. My entire team is inspired by Robert Muller and work in his spirit. You know, I loved reading the book. I also, of course, knew about Robert Muller because he was the first one I came across when I came to the UN in Geneva with my dream, which was very similar Robert Muller's dream. So I have an Egyptian surname. My father was from Egypt, he was a doctor, and my mother Swedish, and I grew up in Sweden. And I had this dream to go to the United Nations. And I applied for an internship, and I was worried, will I get in or not? I didn't write an essay, I was applying. And eventually one day when I was traveling in Europe, my mother called me and said to me, they've contacted you from the UN office in Geneva, you need to call them back. And I called them back, and they told me you got an internship. And that was 1988. And when I came into the UN, because like Robert Muller, I'm an optimist. I believe that there's a spiritual dimension to all that we do in world peace, but I didn't have many mentors. You know, I sometimes I felt almost odd being so optimistic and enthusiastic and connecting the cosmos and the spiritual with world peace and be deep and profound and at the same time a positive spirit. So I didn't. So I used to go to the bookstore and look for books, and I came upon, as Barbara said, all they taught me happiness. So I got a book, and I was a very poor intern, but I took my last Swiss franc and bought the book. And I immediately felt, oh, who is this great man? He just infuses me with energy and an experience, because he was an assistant secretary general and I was just a little intern, but he became a mentor that I had never met. And I read a few more books, and I was researching and learning more and more about him. And I realized that I had come upon a great soul, a great human being, and he was still alive then. This was in 1988. And a few years later, I got into the UN and I started climbing. I was in New York in 97, and I had a colleague of mine. She was committed. I studied law also, like Robert Muller did. And we came up with an idea of integrating spirituality into the UN and human rights. So we composed a booklet called The Spirituality of Human Rights. And then we organized a big panel in the UN, in one of the General Assembly buildings. And she said, we need to get Robert Muller onto this panel. I said, you know him? No, but I can't find him. I know how to get him. Really? But you know, he's been my mentor for the past 10 years since I started as an intern. I can't believe it. No, it's not possible. He's too big for this. No, we'll get him. And a couple of months later, this was 97. I joined 88. Yeah, so it's 9 years later, I find myself walking into this General Assembly panel room and meeting Robert Muller for the first time in my life. And I was able to thank him in person for being a mentor when I was so young and I was looking for a role model, and how I came upon his books and started learning about him and how he kept me going without even knowing I existed. And so there I sat with him next to him in a panel, and I felt, you bet there is some spiritual connection in this world. It would never have happened otherwise. And then the years go by. And I move around in the system, and as Robert Muller did, and do different jobs. I work with justice issues, human rights issues. And then I become the director of Education Cannot Wait, which is a global fund hosted by UNICEF, but for the whole UN system, that focuses, as Barbara said, on education in conflict countries and climate-induced disaster countries. And again, we go with the flow, and we do our talks. We are out in public. I have a beautiful, incredible advocacy team. And we stumble upon South California United Nations Association and Barbara Muller. And I'm talking in something called the Global Hero. And Barbara Muller is there. And I think because I wrote a book myself called The Case for Humanity, and I wrote about Robert Muller. And she had read the book, and she saw I knew her husband. And that's how Barbara Muller and I connected. So now I feel I know a big part of the family from that room. Not everyone, but certainly I know the husband and the wife. And little did I know that this would come true 34 years ago. And here I am together with Barbara today. Now, to speak a bit about Robert, should I, Barbara?
Thank you.
Yeah. You see, when you look at his trajectory of his life, and I think the prophet eloquently describes this, he didn't just sit there with a silver plate and say, I'm going to go and save the world with all that. You know, you can easily become arrogant if you're not facing any challenges in life or obstacles. It's the obstacles and the challenges and the terror you see, the suffering you see, that softens your heart and that deepens you. And as we all know, he lived through 2 world wars. And when he was a child, he saw the borders that he couldn't cross. There was no freedom of movement. He was in the midst of a war. And he couldn't cross it from France because there were the borders and the fences. And I think also he was blessed to have a great grandfather. And I'm sure that his own family was great, but specifically his grandfather that spoke to him about counting your blessings, that you can see. There are those who are blind, that you can eat. There are those who are hungry, and every day count one blessing. So this comes through his formative years. He sees suffering, is himself part of it. He cannot move because of the borders. And he also has mentors around him. And here I mention his grandfather that infused him with that positive energy and gratitude. So I think in the formative years of a child's life are the most important. The suffering we see in this world, or the repression, or the totalitarianism, somewhere can be traced back to childhood. So also can the beauty that we see in the world, the goodness we see in the world, it also traces back somewhere in the formative years. So Robert Muller went through that. He saw the darkness, but he also saw the light. And he was very intelligent and spiritual to process all of that. And then he joined the resistance forces, the French, of course. And I think there, and as the book describes the prophet, and I can almost feel it, the moment when he decided, I'm going to work for world peace. And that's when there were the 20 German prisoners of war that had to surrender to the French resistance, the end of the war. And from Robert Muller's perspective, the war is over. We need to have peace. But he was one of his kind in that sense, because when they were disarmed, he only learned the next day that they were executed. And that was the very moment that he decided to join the United Nations and bring world peace, because I can just feel the soul-shattering knowledge of what had happened. And I have a similar soul-shattering knowledge when I was working for the United Nations in Cambodia as a human rights officer. We were discovering secret prisons during the elections that the United Nations were holding of opposition parties. And we were trying to liberate these prisoners before the elections were held. And as our investigation, it was actually a French gendarmerie who worked with me on that, got closer and closer. We tried to uncover the prisons, but we had people in our own organization who revealed the information to the authorities. And when we reached one of the prisons, someone from inside had revealed to the authorities that we were close to release the prisoners, and they had been taken out early that morning and executed. So I remember the feeling of that. And when I read about Robert Muller's experience, there's all this, you want to do good, but there's always someone who doesn't share that feeling. And as a result, you have these kind of tragedies and injustices. I also, I can relate to, I love this line in the book. I have to read it because, you can be good, but you can also, when people are very good and want to change the world, like Robert Muller, I don't think everyone always honored and liked them. I don't think sometimes you have to stand out and be who you are, and not everyone will say, oh, how great you are, or they may also be jealousy. And when Robert Muller was offered to become a director in the Secretary General's office, which was then a promotion in the Secretary General's office, because he was very well liked by all the Secretary Generals. He worked under 3 of them. He writes on Tuesday, the 27th of January, 1917, I still cannot believe it. Some mediocre individual will put an obstacle to it. And it happened to Gandhi. It happened to Ludwig van Beethoven, Ode to Joy. It always happens to good people. But I don't think he focused too much on that. It was just a spontaneous fear that he would be blocked, and he wasn't. And then he continued to climb up in the system to the level of Assistant Secretary General. And I want to do what his beautiful, amazing, inspirational wife just did. I want to read one of his poems, because this poem, I read it when I was 24. And I think it is from the book, All They Taught Me. All they taught me happiness. Use every letter you write, every conversation you have, every meeting you attend, to express your fundamental beliefs and dreams. Affirm to others the vision of the world you want. Network through thought, network through action, network through love, network through spirit. You are the center of the network. You are the center of the world. You are free, a powerful source of life and goodness. Affirm it, spread it, radiate it. Think day and night about it, and you will see a miracle happen. Thank you, Robert Muller, because when I read this, when I was in my 20s, I was still doubting and wondering, can I make it? Miracles happened. Thank you. You gave me that insight and hope and belief when I was so young. I'm living my miracle now, and I'll continue to spread it to my team, to the children we meet, to those who meet in the darkest corners of the world. Thanks to you, Robert Muller. And what we do at Education Cannot Wait is also so aligned with what Robert Muller did also during the latter part of his life, when he wrote and came up with the word core curriculum for schools. And said, if we do not invest in education and global peace and a world curriculum that reflects all of this spirit and energy and hope and optimism and world peace, we can never bring peace to the world. It's in the formative years that we need to infuse and inspire it. So I hope that we at Education Cannot Wait can work even more closely with you, Barbara, to bring to bear the fruits of the energy, spirit, the vision of Robert Muller and keep it alive, not only through our generation, but the next generation, the next. And education cannot wait. He's then ready to work with you to continue the great mission of your husband and Assistant Secretary General Robert Muller and my mentor. Thank you very much.
I can't thank you enough, Yasmine. We all love the words that you said today. Your inspiration, you are the proof that what Robert says works. You are that woman who he was talking to when he wrote that poem. He knew someday he wasn't going to be here. And one of the things he did, Yasmine, was he always signed every one of his books because he knew they might be in a garage sale someday. And when people see a signature, they buy the book, even though they don't know who the author is. And then they take it home and I get an email. I found this book in a garage sale. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I thank you, Yasmine. Yasmine, you brought up Robert's World Core Curriculum. If you would like to have a copy of the World Core Curriculum, just send me something in the chat. Give me your email because it's a very complete curriculum. It's called the Framework for Global Education. And this global education, he writes, here is a brief history of the World Core Curriculum and why I want every educator to feel that they are the creator of our future. The World Core Curriculum, he wrote it to make sure that as we are global citizens, and now with the internet, we have no choice. We are global citizens. We see the tragedies and we see the joy of our planet today. Jerry, would you like to say something? You're muted, Jerry. Please unmute. All right, Jerry. We still don't hear you, but you'll get there. Jerry is going to be our next introducer of the next chapter. She's having a little trouble unmuting, but she'll be there in a minute. Let's see if we can unmute her. Let me see. I'll go and make sure you're not muted. Desmond, you're not muted, so you should be able to say something. We'll get her. We still have her muted. She has her hand up. Okay, we'll get her. But I'm seeing Desmond also mentioned that Robert playing his harmonica is on his website, visioneers.ca. Hi, Lori. I see you're here today. All these wonderful, precious people, but I still don't hear Jerry yet, Jerry and Desmond. Maybe she has to speak in, I don't know. Well, we'll find out what's going on. And okay, the World Core Curriculum, Yasmine Sherif, is also on peacepodcast.org. And if you would like to hear her and talk to her, I think we're getting something. Is it you, Jerry and Des? No. All right. Anyway, Yasmine is on peacepodcast.org, as is Desmond Bergdorfer. He is on peacepodcast.org, as is Douglas Roach, our ambassador. All these fantastic people are on these peace podcasts. And I want to have Lori, I'm going to take a commercial break. Lori, tell us what you'd like to do tomorrow night. Lori is, I don't mean Lori, I meant Tammy Briggs. I'm looking at Tammy Briggs and calling her Lori. Tammy Briggs is a harp player and she's doing a world meditation tomorrow night. Tammy, talk about that for a moment.
So the E-Club of World Peace, that is Rotary sponsored, is doing a peace meditation tomorrow night, and you all are more than welcome to join us. It'll be starting at 5 o'clock Pacific time, and it'll go for an hour. And we meditate in silence, and then I play the harp through the hour, not just intermittently, to help us stay focused and keep our vibration high. So I'll put the information in the chat. It will be on my Zoom link. So I hope that you all can join us.
Just say it out loud for 1 minute, Tammy. The Zoom link. Do you have the Zoom numbers? And that's okay. I was going to just repeat them. But, you know, she plays the harp and we're all on Zoom. And you hear this music, it's like angels are playing. And all of a sudden you realize that we're all connected. And as we meditate, and you have heard the research, you have read the research of people who have meditated to end violence, violence, police brutality. And in these communities where hundreds of people are meditating, it has decreased. Meditation does work. And so as we meditate tomorrow night at 5 o'clock Pacific time, we will be able to have harmony for even that 1 hour. And I'm a meditator, and I pray for all of you, and I hope that you join us tomorrow. With that commercial ending, I'm going to go to the raised hand. Jerry?
Can you hear me now?
We sure can.
Bravo. First of all, thank you, Yasmine, for the beautiful way you described Robert and his mentorship. And that was very touching. I think that we're all sitting here with our open hearts invaded as we watch the violence that is going on in our world. And as these images come into our heart, those of us who knew Robert and who understand how important it is to act, understand that we have to act ourselves. So I want to say just a couple of things about Robert that really touch me. And the first is that he was mentor to many. And as a person who has spent a lifetime mentoring others, and I'm a psychologist, I run a learning center and work with children and youth, I'm beginning to understand as they contact me sometimes 20 or 30 years later, the power of mentorship. So when I heard you speak, Yasmine, I was really touched by how you were open to Robert's mentorship. And that's one of the things that's important, this openness between people. The other thing I want to say about Robert is that he wasn't just an ordinary mentor. Robert was open to create epiphanies in people, meaning that he could change their minds in extraordinary ways. And I think that the world is in great need now for the kind of mentorship that Robert was providing. And so this idea of being open, and you can see in chapter 3, you can see how his childhood, how he's open to new experiences and he searches for them, going out in the morning and exploring and trying to find new things. And so I think that his mentorship, I want to point out that his mentorship is extraordinary, and that it doesn't just create inspiration and enthusiasm, it creates epiphanies in people. It changes their lives, and the outcomes for people like you is the result. And when you add up all the people who Robert has mentored and all the epiphanies that he has created, you see something quite extraordinary. And the third thing I want to say about Robert is that he was a person who acted on his instincts and on his impulses. And so many things are the results of these actions. And so one of the things that Desmond and I are working on, and we invite you all to have a look at, is we are launching in October the project, the Visioneers International Network Web of Good Work. And right now, we are working on 350 extraordinary leaders in 21 countries who are already on our network and who we're going to celebrate in October. We've chosen 10 of them to absolutely feature in this event, and Robert is one, and Barbara and I are talking about how we're going to do this. So I guess what I wanted to say is that when I see the effect of the mentorship, as we've all just seen in listening to Yasmine, and thinking of the thousands of people that Robert impacted by his own life and also by the wonderful book that Douglas has written, I'm just absolutely astounded. And I think that it's our job to share, to send this further, every one of us who have been touched by Robert, to send this out further into the world. And so I'm delighted to be among a community of people who have also been touched. by
And
it.
with that, Jerry, I want to introduce you and Desmond, because next chapter 4 is going to be honored by Desmond and Jerry Bergdorfer. I should say Jerry Schwartz and Desmond Bergdorfer. They are a couple, they are married, and they live in Canada. And they are amazing. They are creating the visioneers.ca. It's a global site that you can go and you can be mentored and you can enjoy the work that they have done. So chapter 4, tune in. We will do it the first Monday of July. Sunday of the July, I think it's July 3rd, actually. So be sure you come and join us. Now, with that, I'm going to go back to our speaker and go back to the gallery. And Yasmine, what are you thinking now? Now that you've heard what Jerry said, did it indeed impact your life?
Yeah, I think my thought goes to how blessed I am. I'm thinking how everything is connected. That I've seen how this serendipity, how energies among people are drawn, and everything falls into place, and how important Robert Muller was, because he stood out for a young girl like me while I was in my 20s, in terms of looking for a mentor in the United Nations, that no one else has done, neither when I arrived, nor during my 30 years of career. I met some really great people, but not with that kind of vision and enthusiasm. And it's not an enthusiasm that is immature. It's one that comes from very profound maturity. You have the courage to be enthusiastic. You have the courage to be an idealist. And I can say this, and I've lived through this organization. Robert Muller stands out. He's absolutely unique. And I never, ever again met someone of his caliber, his ability to see beyond and keep the rest of us moving forward. And I'm a little disappointed that he did not, despite being nominated, I think, around 20 times for the Nobel Peace Prize, was not awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. I think if anybody, but then on the other hand, he has left a legacy behind him that no prize can ever commemorate him. But I must say he's just unique, and I'm very fortunate not only to have been helped and mentored through his books, but also to meet him, and to meet you, Barbara.
Mm-hmm. As I look at you, Yasmine, I realize you said something I forgot to mention. He was nominated 23 times for the Nobel Peace Prize. Mm. And when you look at who are nominated and who gets the Nobel Peace Prize, these are all visionary people. Robert I always tried to say to Robert, I'm keeping you alive because as long as you're alive, we're going to have peace on the planet. And after he passed, we've had so many wars. And I said, okay, you're supposed to be doing what you promised. You promised that you were going to whisper in the ear of all the leaders of every country that peace is possible and it begins now. There's somebody on our wonderful Jim. Jim has Peace is Possible. See his background? Jim Halderman. Jim Halderman, talk a moment about what Robert meant to you. This man is another disciple of Robert's, and we're all disciples of Robert's. Okay, Jim, talk a moment, my dear. Jim Halderman has behind him Peace is Possible. This is the Rotary Action Group for World Peace's model during the next few years, and I have the honor of being the Rotary Action Group for Peace chair of the chairman. Okay, Jim Halderman, give us a few words.
Just a few words? That's difficult, as you well know. But anyway, it's such a thrill to be part of this, and with all of the peace leaders. And it's the positiveness that Robert brings and the possibility. And when we truly take Peace is Possible to heart, it changes who we are. And I just was fortunate enough to receive the book yesterday, and I'm rapidly devouring it and loving every page, every word. I loved chapter 3 to prepare for today. But what a reward, what a gift that he is, and what he has brought, what little I know about him yet, and I'm sorry to say, that's why I'm eager to learn more. but the value to know and accept. And I'm very anxious to learn education cannot wait. Helen Peacock on this and I are working on some programs trying to educate more Rotarians, because we know that we can create a groundswell, that we can create some commotion, and we can start that ripple in the pond. And Helen and I are going to throw a great big rock in this pond and start rippling out to the world, hopefully. Once people begin to accept the fact peace is possible, it will just change. It's amazing. We don't have to know how to create peace. None of that is necessary, as you will learn through your meditation. Sitting quietly, once we accept something is true, as Wayne Dyer said, when you believe it, you will see it. It's not the other way around. And it's the belief that is the creation. It's the belief that makes it happen. So believe peace is possible, and we don't need to know how, because the rest will follow in place. As we listen to people like Chowdhury and Jasmine and all of the people and on this call that speak about this, we become aware. But once we open our mind to the possibility, we hear things that we would never have heard before. So bless this group and bless you all. Thank you.
You know, you are so right. What you said, that once you make up your mind, you're going to do something. I tell you what I have discovered is that people begin to realize that they're going to help you have your dream come true. Now, how does that happen? It happens by the universe supporting you. How many times have you had these coincidences happen when you have made up your mind and there's nothing going to stop you from doing that dream that you have? That's when the universe comes forth and supports you. I'm going to move to Lori Marshall now. The reason I'm moving to her is because she has these murals, well, unbelievable murals called The Singing Tree. She has worked in war-torn zones. She has written books that I read her books all the time because they're so inspirational. Lori, tell us a little bit about your work, because it's very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've developed a STEAM curriculum that incorporates peace literacy while we create a collaborative mural that envisions success and positive future to a community challenge. We're currently working on getting funding for the Changwali Singing Tree to heal the trauma of war in northern Uganda, where the Changwali refugee camp has 125,000 people with 19 sections. And we're hoping to bring 2 people from each section to make this collaborative mural that envisions peace and healing. And the refugee issue, as you all know, is only going to get bigger with climate chaos. And these folks who have been in the refugee camp for a decade, because of mostly from the Congo, they are our teachers. You know, they have lived this, and we're trying to make a space for them to express their genius and creativity and come up with innovative solutions. So we've made 108 murals with 21,000 people from 52 countries. And this was begun inspired by an 8-year-old child who said, what if the whole world made a painting together? And if we can make these small, attainable goals of making this shared vision of success, it helps people understand that they can also achieve their goals step by step. So it's using art as a peace building tool, and would love to work with education. Can't wait. Be thrilled.
If you were to find on your internet Singing Tree murals, you say, how did they create this beauty, this amazing beauty? I thank you with all my heart. And Helen, I'm going to turn to you, because you are the woman with Jim that is creating this new course, a course where we might be able to end wars forever. Helen Peacock, one of the speakers that we have for a mutual assured survival, and she is all over the world talking about the end of nuclear weapons. Helen Peacock, please.
Thank you, Barbara. I love Jim said we're going to drop a big boulder into the stream within Rotary. But yes, we're putting together a course that asks the question, how can we best convey the need to shift from a sort of a war culture to a peace culture? And what do we need to know about the war system to dismantle it? Because we can't fix a problem that we don't recognize. And within Rotary circles, we focus almost exclusively on building positive peace, humanitarian efforts around the world. And in the meantime, the war machine is just clunking along, and at the rate of costing us $75 for every dollar we're putting into humanitarian efforts. So we think this will be really significant and impactful because there are 1.4 Rotarians all around the world. They're already committed to peace. And so we have a belief that we can inspire them to step up to the plate and actually work to end war, as well as the efforts they're doing around positive peace.
As if anybody can do it, it's you, Helen. And Jim, with your partnership, the two of you will make the Rotaries aware that that's part of our goal. World peace. Peace is part of our action. We're service above self in Rotary. We are the Rotary E-Club of World Peace. Our president is on. David Wick is at the bottom. Give us a hello, David. And maybe you might just say a few words because I love David Wick. You have never seen a presidency like this in a Rotary club that has gotten every member to do something important, significant, not important, significant. This man, I tell you, David Wick, without further ado, say something because everybody's going to think you walk on water.
My goodness, I have to practice here. What a delight to be here and to bring to life. For me, I knew Robert through Pathways to Peace and many different things that we did together and with you, Barbara. And to be reading his story is fantastic to, really get a deeper dive. I love that. And everyone here is on a journey of peace building in our various ways. And it's beautiful and it's wonderful to be able to come together like this. But it is, one of the things I'm seeing right now is when the opportunities show up to take action. For example, I live in Ashland, Oregon, and someone has taken a serious misstep in our city council and leaked some information that should not have, been come out at a certain time. I'm calling them to task. I'm sending in a letter and really bringing it forward. It's about trust. It's about building, relationships. So that's an opportunity, and you just go ahead and do that. But doing this through Rotary is fantastic. It's great. Network, and but we all do it in our various ways. And Jasmine, it's great to meet you here and learn more. I look forward to learning more about what we're all doing. But we're all committed, and with Ambassador Chaudhry, working with him for many years with the culture of peace. And that's, how do we manifest that in all the different ways that it can be done? And that's what we're all doing. So, Barbara, you're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. As I'm watching David, it makes me think I am holding a letter that Robert wrote to Avon Madison, the founder of Pathways to Peace. And in here, he said, it gave me a shudder when Barbara gave me your message regarding Verdun. I could not go to the university because he founded he's a co-founder of the University for Peace in Costa Rica with Rodrigo Carasso because of the rain. But I read your letter. I have so much to tell you, Avon. And if you look how long his letter is, type with 2 fingers on the typewriter. He never had the computer. He didn't have a secretary. He had a vision. And he knew that Avon Madison and he would create this day that we're going to celebrate September 21, the International Day of Peace. I don't know if he was a creator or the co-creator, but what happened today is if you go to your calendar, every September 21 is an International Day of Peace. Ambassador Chaudhry, would you have your microphone on? I want to ask Sue Zipp to ask you a question. Her question is, when it's appropriate for Ambassador Chaudhry to take a moment to reply, do you think he could talk about the United Nations, how it can provide mentorship, or what leadership is possible today? I am looking at the beautiful face of Ambassador Chaudhry. Would you be able to reply? I'm not sure he's right by his mic, so let's see if he is. Ambassador Chaudhry? You are muted. If you unmute, maybe you can talk a little bit about the UN today. Okay, he may not be here. So let's go on down to anybody else who would like to say something. Oh, Douglas Roach, where are you? We haven't had Douglas Roach say anything at this point either. And Douglas Roach, as I told you, is the first
He had to
speaker
step
we
away,
had.
Barbara.
Huh?
Douglas Roach had to step away.
That's fine. Okay, Sue Zip, I see Ambassador Chaudhry's on. Ask your question, please.
Well, I believe that you just asked him, and I think he's ready to answer now. Maybe he's trying to do that.
All right,
because-
Ambassador Chaudhry, without further ado, we'd love to hear what you think about the United Nations today and where we can go from there. Thank you. Thank you, Sue Zip, for your question.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful event. I think Yasmine Sherif has done a super job. I think she spoke with passion, spoke with empathy, and she brought our thoughts about Robert Muller in such a wonderful way. And I think as we continue our journey through the book, Prophet, one chapter at a time every month, I think it will culminate in a wonderful way into his birth centenary next year. And I think that is the build-up we want to have as we move on. So thank you, Ms. Muller. Thank you very much for creating this innovative way of, climaxing to the birth centenary next year. About I think anything we talk about education, the most important thing to bear in mind that education has been there, particularly in the industrialized world, for ages. But what we have got out of that, just education doesn't mean much. Are we creating a opportunity for somebody to get a job, or we are creating a better human being? What is the purpose of education is very important. And we are preparing or giving today's education is to make, at least in my country and other countries in the similar situation, are making people clerks, clerical staff, get a degree and get a job. But we have to ensure that quality of education, as a matter of fact, we discussed today about global citizenship. And that is the objective of education, which will make us better, not only human beings, but better global citizens. That is very important. I say that for achieving global peace and understanding, a very important thing is to build up a mindset to feel that the world is my own home. Every part of, we used to talk about the global village in earlier occasions. So it should be anywhere I am in the world, I should know that the concerns, the challenges of other parts of the world is also my challenge. So that is, at least should have empathy and support to that. So that's why I believe it is very important. Unless we change our objective for education, I think we'll not make much progress. And we have discussed with UNESCO, peace education is mostly about conflict resolution. But we have to go beyond how the education, and it is very simple way of teaching that the teachers can do. The parents will have to start at home, and then teachers, and then onward. And so that is why I believe that United Nations also need to create that mentorship opportunity that you asked about. Even the concept of mentorship, which Robert Muller, propagated very, very strongly. is not there. Everybody is fending for himself or herself. And that way, the people who work in the secretariat or in the field, we do not feel even as a part of one bigger mission of the world. Because as I said in some of my speeches, nearly 70% of women, UN staff have not read the Charter of the United Nations thoroughly and connected it with his or her work in the United Nations. And that is why. So I think UN in that way is not ready to be an organization to provide us mentorship. I do not feel encouraged by that thought, because there is not, my experience at least tells me that there is no mentoring. Whatever we are doing now is after we have left the United Nations, we feel passionate about our mission and our objective to promote the culture of peace and global citizenship. I continue to speak and advocate, but I am just one person. But
no, you're not. You know, Ambassador Chadre, from your lips to God's ear, I listen to you, and I've already gotten 3 ideas of what we can do to help the United Nations. So, Ambassador Chadre, I have to thank you with all my heart for being that visionary, for staying at the United Nations, for knowing that there can be improvements. And what you said about the Charter of the United Nations, how many of you, don't lift your hand up, but look at what the Charter for the United Nations says: to avoid the scourge of war. Why was the United Nations founded? To avoid the scourge of war. And here we are. Since the last World War, we've had 250 small wars. They're still shooting people, thinking that shooting is going to allow peace. How can that be? Where's the logic of that? If Robert were here today, you'd say, is that even logical? That if you shoot somebody, we're going to create peace? No way. Anyway, long story short, I thank each of you. Yasmine, I'm going to ask you to give us a little bit more of, now that you've heard the reactions of people to your wonderful program, give us your website so that we can go there and check out more that we can do to help you. Yasmine, please.
Thank you very much. I think our website, I will ask Ken, could you please give the website? Is it Education Cannot Wait?
Yeah, I'll type, it's educationcannotwait.org, and I'll type it into the chat right now.
Thank you so much. Kent has been such an important part of today. Kent, I thank you. You know, the people behind the scenes are the people that we wouldn't get along without. Kent, you're one of those, and we honor you. And Yasmine, your turn again.
Yeah, no, I also want to say that as a United Nations Global Fund, we invest in education in 43 countries through countries that are in emergencies or in protracted conflict. So we invest in education, we bring UN actors and civil society together, and we have reached 30 million children in response to COVID-19, and 5 million of them have actually received a quality education and a continuous education. But we have another 222 million children that have their education disrupted in armed conflict, in brutal situations like the Sahel, Afghanistan, South Sudan, Uganda was mentioned, refugees. So it's very, very important that we continue to raise our voices and awareness. And I just want to thank Ambassador Chadre for your kind words, and also the way you explained the UN. I've seen your name, Ambassador Chadre, when you were still in the UN, but I don't think we have had the privilege of meeting with you. But thank you for your kind words, and I do agree with you. So I would like to end by saying something, and I speak, in echo what Ambassador Chadre said as a former UN official. I do believe that to materialize a vision, to make a vision come true, you first have to become the vision. And I think that's the biggest challenge for the United Nations. Each and everyone working in the UN have to become the vision in our day-to-day actions, decision-making and thinking and doing. And I think you are not in the UN, but you are around and you are the UN. So all of you, thank you for reminding us. Thank you for your sheer existence and actions and being.
Our speaker today was Yasmine Sherif, and I want you to know how important her work is. When I was a little girl, I said to my mother, I want every child to be safe, Mom. She said, well, that's quite a big wish. I said, yeah, but if every child is safe, we can't have any more wars. We can't have hunger. We can't have atrocities because they're not safe. It was such a simple plea of a 4-year-old little girl. But that came from my grandfather when I was 3, and he said I would be a peacemaker. I want you to look at your screen. Thank everybody with your heart and your mind for the people who joined us. And underneath Diane, my friend in La Jolla, is a book called Peace, a magazine, Peace Community Magazine, War No More. You are the peace other people need. This vision of peace is what I want us to bring back to our families and to the world. You know, it's up to us to be the peace that other people need. And you are the peace other people need. And we're going to be coming out with the next issue of the Peace Magazine. And remember, Peace Podcast is there for you, those mentors that you may want to watch and just pay attention to. And again, I want you to know that Chapter 4, July 3rd, is going to be with Desmond and Jerry Bergdorfer. Jerry, did you want to say a final word?
Yes, I especially wanted to say to Yasmine, with regard to the Nobel Peace Prize, Robert has been awarded and will get the designation in October as a hero of humanity. And this prize will become equally important to things like the Nobel Prize. And so I think people should go to his site on the website and see this, and invite all of you to join us. I want to say to Ambassador Chaudhry that the United Nations is very important, not only for what it does internally, but what it stands for. And on our site, we have the United Nations section, which is devoted, which is introduced by Robert playing the harmonica. And as he plays, 350 wonderful stories are told as examples of progress on the United Nations 17 SDGs. And so you can see that while the United Nations internally may be having these problems, in the future, it will be the people, Ambassador Chaudhry, who take the inspiration from the United Nations and do this. And so that's exactly what we're doing. And one of the things as a scientist, as a neuroscientist, that I know, that it is important, very important, to use observable evidence, not just opinion. And so what we are doing is we are gathering observable evidence of the incredible stories, of the wonderful things that are going on in the world, inspired by things like the United Nations and the Charter. And I would like to say to those people involved in education, ask them to look at the walking school bus on our site, which has been given one of the awards, where a young man has created the ability to learn how to read, has given the gift of literacy to children in Uganda through his ingenuity and his ability to create these schoolrooms where he's teaching children to read. And this year he taught 35,000 children to read. Can you imagine the gift of such a thing? And so in this wall of stories, there are all kinds of examples that are inspired by human evolution and goodness. And I think in the future, we're going to have to do something different than we have been doing now. We're going to have to go beyond all these borders and beyond the things we're doing now. And one of the ways that we can do it is to work together. And that's why this kind of conversation is so important, that we have not only to do our own work, which we are all doing in an important way, but we have to show the observable evidence of what happens when we work together. And you introduced the concept of Margaret Mead and what she said about how it takes a few people acting together who is the only way that the world has ever moved forward. Well, it takes intention to do that. And one of the reasons we're discovering that in neuroscience now is that the greatest resource of our humanity is not oil and coal and gold and other things. It is the human resource acting together, so that we understand that if we do that, we can multiply our good work many, many fold. And so thank you, Barbara, for bringing us together in this way. And thank you, Robert, wherever you are, for having inspired all of us in this way. And
what beautiful words to end our talk today.
Thank you. Can
I also
say
want to
1
thank
minute?
Andre, Ambassador Chadre. Did you
Yes.
say something?
Yeah, I wanted to say that what I spoke about the United Nations, I think it was not fully understood or well taken. I agree with that. But I believe that UN as a human organization has its inadequacies, incapacities, and difficulties. So unless UN is ready to accept, to acknowledge what are its deficiencies, it will not be a worthwhile, mature organization. It's
Ambassador Chadre, Robert always said that. He always said, if we didn't have the United Nations, we would not have the global voice. And that is our global voice. Ambassador Chadre, your work is so valuable now. You're calling it like it is important, because a lot of people agree with you that there's need for improvement. And I want to quote something Jerry said. We are at a point of human evolution. We are evolving. And I want to quote something that Yasmine said. She said, we are the education our future needs. We, and as she travels on airplanes and she goes into these war-torn zones, I can't believe the effect that she has. So each of you, with Helen working against nuclear weapons and Ambassador Chadre working at the United Nations tirelessly, Sue Zip, who's on here today, Douglas Gillies, we would not be here today without you, my dear Douglas Gillies. Douglas Gillies, I don't know if you can say anything, but please wave at us. Let us hear your voice. We want to hear you. Douglas Gillies is, I don't know how he did it. All I can say is, Douglas, I think you were born for a purpose bigger than all of us, because you wrote this book. We could not live the treasure that Robert was without this book. Now, we know he did 7,500 ideas and dreams for a better world. We did 12 volumes of his ideas, and that was kind of like our baby. We worked on these every single day, our whole marriage, and we ended up with 7,500 ideas. Jerry has 350 mentors. All we have to do is find something that makes our passion come alive. It's not about everybody else. It's you. The passion that you bring to our world is what is contagious. That's why I fell in love with Robert. He was contagious. I couldn't help it. Everybody said, why are you together? I said, we're two magnets. We're the same. We believe that peace is possible. A simple statement, peace is possible. And that's where we are. And if you see the Peace Community magazine, War No More. And we will be back July the 3rd. I'm Barbara Muller. Each of you is a precious gift. You are gems for our world. And I thank you for joining us today. Diane is playing music for us. Thank you, Diane. And I think it's Ode to Joy. With that, may this next month be a month of peace for you. Okay, and may this next month be a month of peace for you until we see you on July 3rd with Jerry and Desmond. And we look forward to your comments. I will save the chat. I will be sending out the World Core Curriculum to those who wanted it. And each of you are precious. You are part of the human evolution that will change our planet within our lifetime. That's my goal. Why do you think we all look so healthy? We have work to do. So let's stay healthy, happy, and let's work together. And Lori Marshall in El Paso, Texas is going to lead us on our way, and we can do it. All right. Blessings. May I tell you again how grateful I am, Yasmine. You brought to life why Robert wrote the World Core Curriculum. You brought to life that the United Nations is beyond its corridors. It is into every heart of every child that has heard Yasmine. Just imagine you're a little child, you're eating no food, you're eating out of a tin can, and in comes Yasmine, this beautiful woman, and she says, I'm going to teach you a few things. Do you know what that does to a child? A child in a country that's in kind of a camp. I have talked to refugees who are now in positions making speeches. They were born in refugee camps. They lived their entire childhood in a refugee camp. And in comes Yasmine, this beautiful woman, and they say, if she can do it, so can I. And when I would teach, I always dressed up fancy because I said to my children when I was a teacher, if I can do it, so can you. And I want everybody to know that you are the model we all need today. And with that, I bless you. Thank you. And join us again July 3rd. Bye for now.